Welcome to another edition of Daily Airline News, focusing on the tragic crash of Air India Flight 171. I'm Geoffrey Thomas, and I'm delighted to say joined once again by my co-host Richard Godfrey in Frankfurt, Germany. Good morning to you, Richard.
And good afternoon to you in Perth, Australia, Geoffrey.
Thank you. So, viewers, today, as promised, we're going to look at the FADEC. So many viewers are discussing the FADEC and its role on Air India Flight 171. Some viewers are certain that the FADEC caused the crash. The key question is, what is a FADEC, a full authority digital engine control system? And today we're going to analyze the FADEC in some depth. So Richard, let's start off with a description. What is a FADEC?
FADEC is the primary computer system that automatically manages and controls all aspects of the aircraft's engine operation. Each engine has two redundant FADEC channels for reliability. The FADEC manages thrust according to the selected thrust mode, either toga, takeoff, go around, or climb, or cruise, or it's not being set by the auto throttle, but by the manual throttle levers in the cockpit. It automatically adjusts the temperature deviation, the ambient pressure, and bleed air demands. And the FADEC interfaces with the electronic engine control, the EEC, which is essentially the hardware housing for the FADEC logic.
So when was the first FADEC introduced, Richard?
You have to go all the way back to 1982. The first operational FADEC in military aviation was on a Rolls-Royce Turbomeca Adur Mark 871 engine for the Jaguar, which was a twin-engine ground attack and trainer aircraft. The first commercial usage was 1984. That was a General Electric CJ 805-23C. It's used on a business jet. And the Pratt& Whitney PW2000, which was used on the Boeing 757.
Okay. So now, today, fast forward, how many different types of FADEC are there out there?
Well, it's a long list. There are meanwhile 24 different types of FADEC in commercial aviation and a bunch more in military. By the 1990s, the ICAO, FAA, and the EASA in Europe strongly favored FADEC-equipped engines because of their safety, efficiency, and compliance with emissions standards. Currently, every major commercial aircraft type has a FADEC, and there are both standard FADECs and custom FADECs per engine. So it's quite a long list.
So let's bring this back to Air India Flight 171. What sort of FADEC is installed on the Boeing 787?
Well, there are two types depending whether it's GE or Rolls-Royce engines. And for the GE NX-1B engine, it's the FADEC 3, which is a third generation FADEC. And that's built by FADEC International, which is a joint venture between Safran and BAE. And if you have the Trent 1000 engine, you have a custom FADEC, which is manufactured by BAE Systems in a joint venture with FADEC International.
So there's a bit of a crossover there with the suppliers of the FADECs for the 787.
Yep, absolutely. Crossover and back.
So you can't swap the engines on a 787 between GE or Rolls-Royce.
No, it's like trying to swap a Formula One car's Mercedes engine for a Ferrari engine. The mounting, the electronics, the cooling, the control systems are all designed as an integrated package. So on the Boeing 787, the engine pylon and mounting structure is different. Each engine has a unique mounting point and weight distribution and center of gravity. The nacelle shape, the inlet, the thrust reverser systems are engine specific. There are different aerodynamic characteristics and different drag and airflow patterns. The FADEC software, the electrical interfaces, the data protocols differ. The ICAS monitoring differs, and the thrust logic and the performance data of each engine is different. The fuel, the hydraulics, the bleed air, the electrical generation systems are all engineered for the specific engine model. The generator drive ratios, the bleed air pressure schedules, the cooling air demands vary. Each engine and airframe combination is separately certified with unique performance, noise, and emissions data. And swapping engines would actually trigger a full recertification program, basically like certifying a new aircraft variant.
Mm.
So, Geoffrey, that wasn't the original idea behind the engine exchange, was it?
No, it certainly wasn't. And it's a fascinating contrast with what you've just described there, Richard, because back in the formative days of the 787 program, Boeing came up with a great innovation to make the 787 attractive to both operators and lessors and banks. And that was they were offering for the first time on any commercial airliner the ability to essentially swap the engines from different manufacturers in less than 24 hours. The unprecedented initiative revealed in March 2004, that's 20 years ago now, just before the final engine supplier choice was announced, it took the aviation industry by surprise. It was, however, a logical extension of the more electric aircraft philosophy, in which the aircraft systems were less directly dependent on being plumbed into the power plant, which could therefore be unplugged with relative ease. The evolution of this was really driven by banks that they want and leasing companies that would lease aircraft out to different operators for 3 or 4 years, then they'd swap them to another operator. And when you've got two engine choices, it limited the ability to move aeroplanes around. So they're trying to get to a standardization. So Boeing refined its design philosophy around the ability to basically unplug one engine, a Rolls-Royce engine, two Rolls-Royce engines off a 787, and you could plug two GE engines in and then move the aeroplane to a GE airline, if you like. So it would give the aircraft incredible flexibility as far as moving it from one airline to another. Because banks fundamentally and leasing companies are the biggest owners of aircraft today, and this would have given them incredible flexibility. But clearly, it didn't work because of all sorts of dynamics. It was a great idea in principle, but it didn't move forward. So, you can't, as you've suggested, you can't swap engines on a 787 the way they had originally intended. So, and that's a good example of that. The Air India Flight 171, which is what we've been talking about, and the Gen X has the Gen X engine on it. And our viewers have been quoting the ANA Flight 985, but that's got Rolls-Royce engines on it, so you can't compare the two.
Yeah, two different engines and two different FADECs to go with the two different engines. So let me just give you a quick overview of the GE and Rolls-Royce FADEC operational metrics. The GE GenX 1B FADEC has been operating now for 17 million hours, flying hours, and the Rolls-Royce Trent 1000 FADEC for 10 million flying hours. And So they've both had a number of flights, 2.3 million or 1.3 million in the case of the Rolls-Royce. And they have on average 128 GE flights per year and 137 Rolls-Royce FADEC flights per year. And that's around about 1,000 hours of flying for each FADEC, whether GE or Rolls-Royce. So
Mm.
they've both been well tested and well tried over the years.
So how reliable then, let's focus on the Air India one, of course. How reliable is the Gen X 1B FADEC?
Well, it's a third generation system and it has a 99.96% dispatch reliability. And in general, over the last 40 years with FADEX, no major aviation accident has ever been attributed to the FADEX system design
Mm.
being flawed or some other malfunction. The Gen X-1B FADEC with 17 million operating hours has seen two major incidents. The first one in 2014 was a Japan Airlines incident, an in-flight shutdown associated with icing conditions. And that prompted a software update to the FADEC logic to manage ice crystal ingress into the engine core. And the second one was the one we're looking at, Air India. And, uh, and that is put down to the fuel switches being set to cut off by the flight crew. So in total, there have been no proven dual in-flight shutdown, IFSDs, due to FADEC malfunction with either GE or Rolls-Royce FADECs on the Boeing 787. And the JAL GE case was a single IFSD, and the Anna Rolls-Royce case was on the ground, and so it doesn't count as an in-flight shutdown. And the Air India case is not yet proven whether it's a FADEC issue or not.
Mm. If there was some other system failure prior to the fuel switches being set to cut off, what then are the possibilities, Richard?
There are five possibilities. First one, the engine control or thrust anomaly before cutoff. So if the GenX FADEC detected a severe fault over temperature, vibration, core stall, oil pressure loss, it would have triggered cockpit alerts on the ICAS. The crew might have followed memory items or checklists in this case and moved the fuel control switches to shut off. In a high stress takeoff scenario, both pilots could inadvertently act on the wrong engine or even on both engines. And the problem is that no FADEC log or FDR evidence has yet been published to
Mm.
show whether a dual or almost simultaneous automatic protection trigger happened. The second thing is false or nuisance warnings. There's been several events where spurious warnings from engine oil pressure sensors or vibration sensors or even FADEC internal channel fault messages. So until we get the FADEC logs, we won't know whether that was one of the occurrences. A third option is the power interruption to the FADEC and the engine electronic control system during the climb. And we have been through the power system and the permanent magnet alternator on each engine and the 28-volt supply to each engine. And so we don't know if there was a dual channel failure there. So it's quite a list. The fourth possibility, thrust lever FADEC mismatch. That would cause confusion in the displays in the cockpit. And the last one is a human factors issue triggered by the startle effect. and a sudden unexpected deceleration on the roll could be misinterpreted as a dual engine surge or flameout. And we just simply do not know which of these scenarios it is currently.
But can we rule out these other possible causes yet?
Nope, because the preliminary report does not include three things. One, engine parameter timelines before cutoff. Number two, the FADEC maintenance logs. And number three, the ICAS message history. And without those, it is nigh on impossible to determine whether there was a genuine engine malfunction that happened first, or whether there was a spurious system failure, or a software glitch, or whether there was an entirely uncommanded human action to cut off the fuel. We're left in the dark by the preliminary report on that.
So FADEC or interface failure could lead to apparent dual idle, which could lead the crew to fuel cutoff.
Yes. This is one possible FADEC scenario that we cannot rule out yet. A fault in either direction, either the thrust lever sensing or the thrust parameter reporting back to the system, could cause the cockpit to see, in inverted commas, idle thrust. And that even if the fuel control logic was still active. The instinctive troubleshooting step might be to cycle the fuel control switches. And a common mode fault in data transmission or power supply or the thrust lever sensing system could make both FADECs behave abnormally, but in the same way on both engines.
No hard evidence has been published yet, either to confirm or exclude that this is what happened.
Yeah, and that's why, again, our plea that the preliminary report should be followed up with some sort of addendum or interim report, and clearly gives us the ICAS messages before cutoff, the FADEC maintenance log entries, and the electrical and avionics bus status. And then we might be able to work out in detail what was going on.
Now, you've written to the AAIB. I think you've written two letters off to them, have you not?
Yep.
And no response, I take it.
No response. And we did one on the captain's flying hours and track
That's
record.
right. Mm.
And then we followed that up with one on the detailed timing of the takeoff roll and the RAT deployment, and a number of open questions. And this is a third email which is being drafted as we speak, with the FADEC data and the ICAS messages. So, it's building and building.
And this is it. Interesting. Some of the comments, Richard, which you've seen as well as myself, are questioning us and saying, why don't you just wait for the final report to come out? Well, we're going to be doing an episode, Richard, aren't we, that we're going to highlight the long list of air crashes where the result has been disputed. The result was buried for 20 years, the true cause. The data has been manipulated. The investigation got it wrong, and it was brought to light by somebody outside the industry. There's an extraordinary list of crashes where it's not clear at all as to exactly what happened, and there's certainly numerous crashes where there have been cover-ups or no data whatsoever, no report has ever been published to date. So I think that'll be a very interesting episode, Richard.
Yeah, and I'm mindful that ICAO normally doesn't like to get involved in individual countries in their investigations. And But they did in the case of MH17,
They
and they
did.
came out with a very clear ICAO resolution on MH17. And
Mm,
that sets a precedent. And I'm also mindful of the fact that the Air India investigation, they did initially refuse, but then they accepted an ICAO observer
mm,
for the investigation.
mm.
And I would be very much encouraged by these two initiatives from ICAO and hope that ICAO would get themselves involved if they felt the need to in this Air India investigation.
Indeed. So, viewers, that's all we've got time for today. And we're going to be back tomorrow to answer your questions. And so, thank you for viewing, watching us. Thank you for subscribing to us. And if you haven't, please do. Thank you for the lovely comments and thank you for the fantastic questions. We do appreciate them very much. And thank you, Richard, for some really interesting analysis of FADEC and its role or not in the tragic loss of Air India 171.
Yeah, and we look forward to the interesting questions that are going to be coming.
We are. We're getting so many wonderful questions, and we do appreciate them very much indeed. We do read them all, I can promise you that, but it's almost impossible to answer them individually. Well, it is impossible because there are so many of them, but we do appreciate them. We do read them. So please tune in tomorrow, and we'll look at some of those questions that you send through. Thank you very much. Thank you.